Let me just start by reflecting a little bit, I guess, on the season. One which I think had plenty of highs for us during the course of 7 months. But in this last week, the lowest of lows, as you can all imagine. And I think today is another one of those. I would hope for all of us. Anyways, you can take it from there.
Jim, we know that Rob is not returning as GM. What have you been told about your future?
I haven't had any of those conversations yet. I'll be talking with Luke at some point, sure. But I do understand whenever there's change like that, significant change, there's usually more.
How important is it to separate the success of the regular season from the failure of the postseason?
Yeah, it's mixed emotions, Dennis, for sure. The guys competed. I just feel, I guess, bad for all of us, for the whole organization, for all you guys. You wanted to be still working and following us through the playoffs. But for the players who I believe, gave so much this year, trusted one another, competed hard for one another. That's where my biggest, feelings of disappointment are, because they, as much as we put everything we have into it, they have to go do the job, and they're not playing anymore.
Given a buffer of a few days, how would you evaluate your own performance and your staff's performance during the postseason here?
Haven't got to that. Haven't got to that necessarily. I mean, listen, it was a hard series. You can always look back and say, maybe we could have done this or could have done that. I think every time you lose, no matter who you're playing, or if you don't win and achieve your goal, you can always think maybe we should have did this better or different. But in the end, you make decisions in the moment with the information you have, and it didn't turn out for us.
Jim, I've heard players and coaches say that there are players that get you to the playoffs and players that get you through. And sometimes some guys can be both. But it appeared that, at least, the way that certain guys were used, that there were guys that just you felt couldn't get you through the playoffs. Is that a fair statement?
No, I don't think that's a fair statement. I think every team has different strengths and every opponent, maybe let me say it that way, has different strengths and weaknesses. And this particular team had certain strengths, that we were wary of. And so had we played a different opponent, it might have been different. Had we beat Edmonton and gone on to somebody else, things would have been different again. I don't think they're static, for me at least. They're not static from series to series. I think you have to evaluate the team you're playing and make your choices. So I can't say that from one series to the next things would look the same. And I think you probably, at least my style, you've seen that over the last year or so, that I do maybe some different things, right or wrong. That's the way I do it. It's maybe not as traditional as others at times.
But to follow up though, you had a guy like Spence who played, averaged 16 a game, if I remember correctly, during the regular season. We had the one game in the playoffs where he played less than 3. Or a guy like Helenius who didn't see the ice after the first period and he had 4 hits. I think in 2 games he had 7 hits in 6 minutes.
Yeah, it's great.
No, which was great, but he didn't. There was not the belief that he could do more. That's where I'm going with where guys that can get you through, and it just seemed that there was a feeling that those guys, by the coaching staff, couldn't help us get to that next level.
Yeah, Sammy, I had no issues with the way he played. So let's be clear there. I think Sammy, as a young player with that frame, is the exact type of player that you talk about getting you through. As he continues on down the path of his career, he will be leaned upon heavily as he gets going, because a lot of times the bigger, stronger guys can really come to the fore in the playoffs. So, I appreciate what you're saying. I had no issues with the way Sammy played, but again, decisions were made for different reasons, none that I'll get into here and now, but I can appreciate the question.
Was there a turning point in the series? Was it the Byfield play?
there were, you could say Kevin hitting the post in the inside of the post on the 2-on-1. So I think there's probably more than one in the end, but those two are the two that jump out to me. I think if you look back into game one, I think we had about 4 chances to hit the empty net where we just missed the empty net. So if you hit the empty net and the game goes away quietly, that might have been a bigger moment in the series than we realized. So there's a number of them. I can't point to one specifically, but I think that game, not being able to close that one out, is probably the biggest moment in the series.
Jim, I know you said you haven't had time to really evaluate yourself and your coaching staff, and you've been in this league for a long time as a coach. This is your first full season as a head coach. Is there anything just right away that you feel like you learned in that first full season as a head coach this year?
That's a good question. Again, I haven't had time to reflect on that quite yet. It's been a lousy weekend, as you can imagine. I will, and I'm sure there's plenty of things. There's nothing that jumps out at me that says, wow, but there are plenty of things. And you learn as you go in season, even, Austin. You try something or try an approach with a player, and you're like, oh, for whatever reasons, that's worked in the past. That didn't work for that player at this moment. And so I would say that there's something comes to my mind very clearly on that. More than one approach, and I think by the end, I guess I learned and adapted. So that's what I would point to off the top of my head.
How about dealing with the media?
I thought that was pretty good, didn't you guys? No, honestly, I tried to. I mean, I can do it. I can do it a couple different ways. I can give you next to nothing if I choose, right? I really can. I don't know. I don't recall. And just an answer. Or I can give you as thoughtful of an answer as I have for the moment. And I hope I tried to strike the balance with you guys. And the playoffs was a little bit different. We tried to keep it a little bit tighter than we typically do. And I thought you guys were fair to me. Good. I thought the relationship was good. So and I hope I can continue to give you guys good information, give you my thoughts as best as I can. You don't have to agree with them. I get that. That's the name of the game here. But if I give you next to nothing, I don't know if I'm being fair to you guys in that regard.
If Janelle was available, how would you have changed the approach, if at all, in the series?
I think that was an important player for us that we missed. You talk about getting through. I think Gino's one of those guys that any team would say, I would love to have him for the playoffs. He's one of those playoff players that helps get you through. So, I mean, who knows? We missed him. We missed him in a number of different ways. His leadership, his physicality, his forechecking ability to rattle D. It is what it is. He wasn't there.
Can you say exactly what his injury is?
No, I'll leave that for somebody else, him or somebody else. It's not my place.
You touched on it. You touched on at the very beginning about your status. Just to maybe further clarify, is it just one of those things where you're going to proceed as head coach until you're told not to, or you're going to discuss it? You and Luke are going to kind of discuss things. Just asking to further clarify how you're just proceeding. Yeah, no, I'm proceeding for sure, like I'm the head coach. At some point, I will talk to Luke, and then at some point, Luke, I would assume it's Luke, is gonna do a search for the GM and hire a GM, and then at some point, I would assume I'll be speaking with him. So, yeah, status quo for me. There's players here that have to be talked to and given a plan and all those types of things. So.
About turning points in the series, would you consider the challenge in Game 3 a turning point? And in hindsight, how would you evaluate that decision?
Yeah, that would have been one of them. Well, in hindsight, that's a pretty easy evaluation. Yeah, in hindsight, it's really easy. Obviously, in the moment, it was more difficult, and we were disappointed with the way it went. We would have liked to come out and kill the penalty thereafter. I think that compounds the call. Yeah. That's a big moment. There's no question.
But along that line, what did you guys see? Because I don't think that's ever come out. What did you guys see that made you feel like it was a challengeable play?
I'm not even going to get into that. I think if people have had a chance to watch it for themselves and back it up, not necessarily right at the moment, but prior to the puck going around the net, there's different things to look at. But
yeah, I don't have to get into it. It's over. It's done. We can't change it.
Did you guys change your approach in any way in games 3 and 4? Did you feel like, were you sitting back? Did you change your approach to the game once you had that lead from where maybe you had started?
No. And if you look back through the season, I think third period is one of our strengths, So I think what sometimes people fail to do is to give the other team credit, especially when they're pushing and they're in their building. And I think you saw a lot of 97 and 29 in those moments for them. So good players. They're hard to contain. And I thought we did obviously not good enough, but a pretty good job of not giving up a lot. But they were able to they were able to score the big goals when they needed them. So give them credit.
But does that hurt? I mean, when you think about, you mentioned 97 and 29. At the end of the day, the last 2 games, what was it? I think 3 assists from the 2 of them, and 2 of those assists were on the empty net goal by Nuge. You guys did a really good job of shutting them down. The depth of their team came through, which I think coming into the series was really more of a strength of this Kings team. Is that?
Well, they got to add Frederick and Kane back into their lineup, but I think there's no question that those 2 made a difference. They had a good series, I believe. So, I don't want to get to rehash too much or talk about their team. Listen, we didn't get it done. They did. There's a number of different reasons we can point to. We can point to moments. We can point to lineup. We can go through it all. Give them full marks. They got it done, and we didn't. And we had our opportunities too. We can't debate that.
Jim, I think it's fair to say the future of this franchise's success relies pretty heavily on Quinton Byfield taking yet another step and continuing to progress as a player. I know you mentioned you were really happy this game. He had the high profile, didn't get the puck out in game 4, but had a really good series. It seemed like really came into his own after that trip to New York in December. But you mentioned that there's still a lot of things you think he can get better at. Is there anything you can share about what you're going to be telling him this summer that he really needs to focus on to maybe take that next step?
I do have a couple thoughts. I don't know if I'm going to share them here right now, and maybe if there's a time down the road, we'll talk about those things. I think the biggest thing you saw is, if we just talk about Quinton for a moment, he was here before I was here. But I think, so I can only speak to my time here, he was up, he got put to the minors, he came back up, he started playing on the wing with Kopi and Juice, did a really nice job. Established himself as an NHL player on the come up with the season before, and then this year went into the middle. And I think if I look back, there's a lot of people that ask me about him playing center, and maybe can't play center, and why are we keep putting him in center. I think he's answered those questions, and I think not only has he answered them, he's shown us that he's continuing to go like this as the season went and into the playoffs. So I still think there's lots there. We have to understand he's just a young player, and we got a lot out of him. But he's got room to grow as a player in a lot of different areas. But he's going to do it, and he'll be a leader for the franchise for a long time.
Kind of along those lines, how much do the younger parts of your roster maybe even need to take a little bit bigger piece of the pie? How much do you want to shift it a little bit more in that direction, and maybe not lean as heavily on your trusted, your experienced guys whatsoever? How much do those younger parts need to kind of take a bigger piece of the pie?
That's always, any organization, ours or anybody else's, there's always lifeblood coming from underneath and you wanting to push. The danger with that I've seen, not just with my teams, but I'm just observing, is people have to take the step when they're ready, or else if you force feed that, sometimes you can stunt growth, and we want to make sure that we don't do that. But I think if you look at the breadth of our young players that came into the lineup this year, you have to be pretty happy with where you think their game is going, and so that's the important part for me. So I look at them, I say, they're all going this way. Now, we're all going to feel like they should be up here next year. Maybe they won't be quite there yet. I hope they are. But they are going this way. And the faster they can get to here, that helps the whole organization, of course. So there's a balance there. But there's certainly some players that look like they're speeding that process up.
Talk about
Two,
ascension.
just sorry to interrupt. 2 more questions. We got a lot of players to get to.
When you talk about ascension, Fiala's ascended, but
Oh,
it was
ascension.
contentious. You scratched him for a game. You have talked about, trying to get through. What got through to Kevin in the last, let's say, 2-3 months that made him the player he was down the stretch?
Save that question, because it's a good question for Kevin. That's what I would say. You know what I mean? It's the player in the end. And so I could have a theory on it, but it's him. But I would say this. His last, I don't know how long probably 10 games of the regular season and into the playoffs. I'm so proud of the way he played. I'm happy for Kevin. I know that's what he wanted to get to, sincerely wanted to get to that level, and that's on him. He got there, and I'm really, really happy for him and really proud of him. So you can ask him the question on how he did it, but it was impressive.
What does this offseason look like for you?
I haven't thought about that. So there's a debrief and a go through the season, not only the season, the players, the playoffs. Just run through that whole process, and then take a break because you need to clear your head out, and then reformulate and find the areas that we need to get better. Not player-wise, but in systems-wise and strategy-wise and deployment-wise. You can go all through all those areas and who is going to take the next step and start putting the puzzle together. But that'll take a little time. We'll have to take a little break first.